Superman is here. I'm going to be reviewing it. Let's just get right into it. I will say the trailers of this film didn't really sell me on it. I was a little bit worried going in, but this is quite a big film, maybe the most anticipated of the entire summer, and really the whole future of DC Studios rests on this film's shoulders to do well at the box office, to be well received. This is the first film in the DC universe, which is being headed by James Gunn, obviously of Guardians of the Galaxy fame, who both wrote, directed, and produced this film. And honestly, I'm not sure what I was worried about, because James Gunn has never really let me down as a filmmaker, really ever. I think all of his comic book movies are some of the best of the genre and really tap into what makes it so special. And Superman is no different. I'll just cut right to the chase. This is quite good, about as good as I thought it was going to be, arguably exceeded my expectations, and is doing stuff in a different and unique way that sort of sets itself apart from other superhero films, as well as just Superman movies in general. James Gunn is known for like a pretty goofy, irreverent tone, and I think there is still some goofiness within this film, but he sheds away a lot of the irreverence, and there's just like a lot of sincerity and sentimentality to the Superman, and a lot of heart and emotion at the core of this film that I think makes it really work. But James Gunn still allows himself to be very goofy, which is pretty like obvious for a comic book movie. I find it odd whenever comic book movies take themselves way too seriously, as comic books are just inherently goofy, and Gunn really leans into that. There's a lot of like eccentric and zany side characters within this film that I found to be incredibly entertaining, while never really detracting or taking the focus away from Superman. I guess that leads us to David Cornsweet, who is quite good as Superman, as well as Clark Kent. He's doing a cool thing with his voice where he's sort of changing it so you can actually buy the fact that like you can't tell that Clark Kent is Superman, and is also, balancing a lot of the humor and the heart of the film. Has some jokes and one-liners that certainly work, but also is able to get quite intense and emotional. At the heart of this film is just Superman like being a good guy and doing the right thing, even when it's hard, which is like kind of corny, but this movie is sort of cheesy in a sense, but is never afraid to get like sentimental or romantic or like overly sincere, which is rare in comic book movies and blockbuster movies in general. Lately, Hollywood is like so cynical and self-deprecating that a lot of the time any sincerity has to be like undercut by a joke. And Superman has plenty of jokes, obviously, but they're never undercutting tension or undercutting dramatic moments, which I think is a really difficult tightrope to walk, and is kind of unlike what James Gunn has done with Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a lot of moments where the emotion is a little bit undercut by the irreverent humor within those films, and Superman, that's just not the case. There is jokes here, but it's never really like the forefront of the film. There's really no origin story for Superman. He's just like starting out as Superman already, and he's fighting crime literally like 30 seconds into this film. And I thought that was a fun and unorthodox way to go about telling this story. A lot of moments that just sort of happen, a lot of action that is really, really great, but is somewhat inconsequential within the grander scheme of the film. There's a scene where he like fights a big dragon that's really cool and like visually looks great, but isn't necessarily all that important within the grander scheme of the plot. But it's still fun to just like watch Superman save people and fight a big dragon. And what makes James Gunn so great as a comic book filmmaker is that he understands that. He really like knows what people want within a comic book movie, and this I think is really what people want, is just like fun Superman action, a lot of Superman flying, but also like a lot of heart and a lot of messaging within the film. It is subtly political, but it's never really making that its primary concern, and is mainly just trying to be a deeply human and character-driven film about Superman trying to be like the best version of himself that he can be. It feels very comic booky, feels a little zany, a little off-kilter in a lot of moments, but never really loses the emotion at its core. Like I said, there is a lot of side characters within this film, but there is a primary antagonist in the form of Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult, and he's great in this movie. They really just let him be pure evil. They give you like no way to emotionally relate to him because he's just like a psychopath. He's like mustache twirly, cartoonishly villainous. And Nicholas Hoult plays that really, really well. And then some of the other side characters are great, have a lot of really interesting powers that are just fun to watch visually. This movie really pops. The cinematography is quite gorgeous. I was a little bit hesitant about it from the look in the trailers, and I do think some of the CGI is a little spotty in moments, and some of the shots are almost like too oversaturated or too bright in a sense. But there is just genuinely a lot of creativity within the visuals of this film, a lot of gorgeous establishing shots, a lot of incredible action sequences that are filmed with this very like kinetic camera movement. And Gunn is just genuinely great at filming superhero action regardless of what the character's powers are. I think he has this encyclopedia like knowledge of like every superhero that's ever existed within any comic book ever. And as a result, he knows which ones are going to have powers that look really good in film form. And that is certainly the case here. Elemental Man, I think his name is briefly in this film, but in his action sequences is just like really fun to watch do whatever he's doing. There's a lot of movie within this movie as well, a lot of different action sequences, a lot of different set pieces that are set in very different parts of the world, very different parts of like time and space. And the movie never really feels overcrowded, I don't think. Arguably, like the first 10 minutes are a little clunky because they just throw you right into it. And it's a little hard to get acclimated to the pace and the tone and the style of this film. But once you kind of get your sea legs as the viewer, the movie just like keeps rolling and is really entertaining throughout. Full of a lot of ideas, a lot of characters, a lot of jokes, a lot of action sequences. Just a very stuffed movie, but again, never feels overstuffed or overwhelming, and always finds a way to get back to the core of this film, which is really Superman as a character. A film that, just like its protagonist, is unapologetically optimistic in its viewpoint of the world and of humanity in a way that I found to be quite endearing. The score really matches that as well, has this very like uplifting tone to it that I think matches the film's style very well. A lot of like electric guitar work in here, especially when they're doing the Superman theme, that I thought just sounded great and was like genuinely transcendent in a lot of moments, specifically near the end. And overall, I was very satisfied by this movie. I thought, technically speaking, it looked quite good. The score was very good. The performances were really solid, a lot of fun characters, a lot of pretty good jokes. My minor nitpicks is that it's never like laugh out loud funny. There's a lot of like light chuckles within this film, but I don't necessarily think it's always as funny as James Gunn's previous work. But it's also not really trying to be. It's trying to be a bit more dramatic than what he typically does. And once again, he proves that he is arguably the best comic book movie director ever. This is like a really great shot in the arm for this genre, which feels like is getting slowly more uninteresting. I think they've just gotten very formulaic and a little bland and quite predictable, and this movie is doing things in a different way. You know, it's structured differently, it's paced differently, it's styled differently. It's definitely trying to push things in a different direction, not only for the comic book genre, but specifically for DC as a studio. I'm curious to see how this functions as like the opener of a universe, as this doesn't really have a lot of moments that feel like they are obviously teasing whatever is coming next. But Gunn will obviously cross that bridge when he gets to it, and I think it's just great to start off with a film that is this good. Very entertaining, a lot of fun, and a lot of great heart to it. So I would give this movie a 4 out of 5. Arguably on rewatch, I think it might bump up to a 4.5 out of 5. Really, really good. Definitely recommend this one. Go see it in the theaters. Glad that DC finally has a hit on their hands, because it's been quite a while since that has happened. But that's all I got. Superman, quite good. Go watch it, and goodbye.